When it comes to the Mario Kart franchise, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is home to the most tracks out of any game, and it's not even close. Considering this large pool of tracks, players have shredded each one to pieces over the last 6 years, whether it be Big Blue, Snowland, Ribbon Road, or even Excite Bike Arena, a track that only has 2 turns. No matter what the track may be, players have found ways to optimize them to their absolute limits, whether it be through taking advantage of little quirks in the game's mechanics, finding the optimal vehicle combination, or even pulling off unintentional shortcuts despite the game doing everything in its power to make unintentional shortcuts unviable. But what would happen if you took a track like Baby Park and tried to optimize it? I mean, there's no ramps, gliders, or complex turns on Baby Park. In fact, all you have to do to complete a time trial of this track is drive in this small oval 7 times. That is literally it. So you'd think that the world record on Baby Park would stay relatively the same, maybe with some very small improvements here and there, but in reality, this sentiment couldn't be any farther from the truth. Now when it comes to time trials, there is of course 150cc and 200cc, so you may be wondering which world records I'll be covering. Well, the answer is both. Starting off with 150cc, the first recorded time that I was able to find was a 106.908 by Kata, which was set a day after Deluxe's release. Let's take a look at how Kata pulled this off. You'll see that they are not only using the Streetle, but the red roller wheels alongside the parachute, which produces these stats. Considering that this run was almost 6 years ago, the stats that each vehicle combination has is quite different now, but regardless, you'll see later on that players will find the optimal combination for Baby Park, as there will be a combination that will make its appearance in most of the future 150cc world records. It's also important to note that the glider you use still holds significance even on Baby Park, because it still influences other non-gliding stats, and on top of that, your character holds great significance. If you choose to play a heavier character, you'll have a higher ground speed but lower mini turbo, while playing a lighter character entails that you have a lower ground speed but higher mini turbo. As you can see here, Kata plays the Inkling Girl, which is considered to be a medium character, meaning that those 2 stats that I just mentioned are relatively balanced. On the very first lap, you'll see that Kata gets these 3 coins, followed up by purposefully taking a wide turn here to get these 4 coins. The reasoning for this lies in the fact that collecting 10 coins will increase your speed, which is crucial when it comes to time trials, even if it means you have to slightly go out of your way for some coins in the first lap or 2. In fact, collecting 10 coins is so crucial that almost any top level time trial that you see will have the 10 coins collected. Once Kata completes the first lap, they get the remaining 3 coins that they need here, followed up by using a shroom here on lap 3, 4, and 5, which is then followed up by doing the same shortcut on lap 6 and 7, but without the shroom. Over the next few days, Kata would continue to optimize Baby Park, where on May 2nd, they would get their first ever 105, followed up by a 105.487 that same day. However, when May 3rd came around, a player by the name of Chim would get their first world record with a time of 105.251, followed up by getting a 104.898 just 2 days later. In the span of 1 week, the world record had already seen 2 entire seconds of optimization. Let's see how Chim was able to pull this off. Right off the bat, you'll notice that the combination Chim uses here is very different from what Kata used, so let's talk about that. First and foremost, Chim is using the lightest character class that you can use in the game, as they are playing Baby Daisy. Alongside that, they are using the Biddy Buggy, Leaf Tire, and Cloud Glider. So as you can imagine, the ground speed you could get with this combination is quite a bit lower compared to Kata's combination, but the lack of ground speed is made up for with the extremely high mini turbo, alongside some of these other stats, which I'll explain the importance of later. Now Chim's run starts off pretty similar to Kata, as they take the same path Kata did to get to the required 10 coins, but after they collect the last 3 coins, they do the cut that Kata did but shroomless, followed up by using the shrooms for the cut here instead. This allowed for Chim to save time over Kata every single lap, as the mini turbo allowed for Chim to seamlessly do the shroomless cut, although Chim does not have to do this cut here without the shroom, considering that they don't have enough mini turbo to save time with it, so instead they just do a tight drift around the grass. Now this run was very impressive, especially considering the fact that many other players failed to replicate the seamless drifts through the grass, or at the very least failed to save time with it like Chim did. However, despite Baby Park already being very optimized on 150cc, there was still room for optimization. If someone could find out a way to also drift through this patch of grass here without the shroom, then a 103 or even a 102 could be possible, but alas, Chim's record would stand for years. Just kidding, it actually only stood for 3 days because Chim would do exactly what I alluded to, which allowed for them to beat their own record by an entire second, which was then optimized over the following days to a 103.163. Surprisingly, Chim used the same vehicle combination, but the character they used was different. This character would be none other than the Inkling. With the return of the Inkling, alongside the tighter turns and the streamless cut, which was now being performed on every single lap excluding the beginning lap where Chim gets the coin, Chim was able to get this record and reign dominance on Baby Park in 150cc. But what about 200cc? Well, when it comes to 200cc, the first recorded run I was able to discover was a 47.864 by Anthony, and as you can imagine, the vehicle combination alongside the strategies used were wildly different from what we've seen thus far in 150cc. You'll see that Anthony uses Daisy alongside the Wild Wiggler, the button wheels, and the parachute. As you can imagine, heavy characters are off limits on this track, as you just wouldn't be able to make those tight turns without slowing down. Anthony's vehicle combination would of course be more optimized later on, as players found out that using the smallest character class was the most optimal for 200cc, but nonetheless, Anthony was able to drift through the grass every single lap, allowing for him to close out the time that he did. Throughout the rest of 2017 and 2018, the record would very slowly go down by the likes of Raz, 3UP, Luigi Fan 2, Alpha, and Darky. Out of those players though, Darky and Alpha would come out on top, as they would both bring the world record down millisecond by millisecond and reign dominance over everyone else. However, when Christmas Eve of 2018 came around, a change would be made to 200cc Baby Park time trials. Alpha would get a world record of 46.367, but this time, Baby Daisy was used because you're not only able to get that high mini turbo stat that I was talking about earlier, but you're also able to get high acceleration, handling, and even traction. Handling was obviously important because it allowed for those tight turns to be made more optimal, but acceleration and traction were also very important because acceleration allowed for you to get back to top speed after your drift, which is, you know, very important in a track where you're constantly drifting, while traction was significant as it allowed for these turns through the grass to be more optimal, as traction is the statistic that influences off-road driving. Another optimization would also be made, and this optimization would be none other than collecting 10 coins. Unlike 150cc, it took a bit of time for players to find an optimal coin route on 200cc, and in fact, it was initially perceived that it would be better to just not get the 10 coins, as they'd be too out of the way on 200cc. However, this was not the case, as a coin route would be developed that allowed for 10 coins to be collected by lap 2. Alpha would continue to optimize Baby Park on 200cc throughout 2019, 2020, and even 2021. It was safe to say that they were the undisputed champion of Baby Park on 200cc. I mean, just look at this record they set on January 19th of 2021. Every drift, every turn, every line was optimized to the extreme, but even then, the final time was a 45.349, which was only 2.5 seconds better than Anthony's time in 2017. Now, of course, 2.5 seconds is huge, but the fact that this small amount of time is so vast in terms of Baby Park is just a testament to how optimized this track really was. From here, the only thing that would realistically improve the Baby Park world record would simply just be driving, because a new vehicle combination or discovery on this track just seemed completely out of reach. So throughout 2021, the world record would be improved as a result of better driving by not only Alpha, but another player who came into the mix, Eternal X. They would trade the world record back and forth until August 4th of 2021, where Eternal would get a 44.794. Eternal was now satisfied with their world record, and Alpha was also satisfied with their time trial on Baby Park, because after all, Alpha had set so many world records on Baby Park and even got the first 44 and 45. So what was left was Eternal's record, a record that seemed almost untouchable. Now Eternal's run would stand and stand, but when it came to 150cc, there were multiple players hacking away at the record, even if the records were fewer and farther between. Now Chim's record that was set all the way back in May of 2017 was beat about a month later with a time of 103.131 before a player by the name of Blue would go on to get the first ever sub 103 on June 11th of 2017, and for the next 6 years the record would be brought down numerous amounts of times, but alas, would stay at a 102. Some records lasted a few days, some lasted a few weeks, and some even lasted for hundreds of days. But regardless, players tried to shave off every single millisecond that they could. In fact, the record had gotten so optimized that by the time 2022 rolled around, there was actually a world record tie to the millisecond between Genzua and Freak, despite both of them using different mushroom strategies in their respective runs. To put into perspective how insane this world record tie was, they not only used different strategies, but they had different lap times on all 7 of the laps. Lap times so different that when the records were put side by side, they don't even look remotely identical. Essentially, the odds of a tie happening on Baby Park were extremely low, but regardless, a 102.142 was the time to beat. But going into 2023, no one seemed capable of taking the record down. That was until Judgment Day arrived. On March 9th of 2023, Nintendo released a balance patch in the hope of changing the Mario Kart meta, because up to this point, there were only a few select combinations that were considered optimal. Nintendo wanted there to be more variety when it came to not only the vehicle combos people use, but the characters people use, so they made all of these stat balance changes, which I'd highly recommend watching Basics video on the patch if you're interested in hearing about the balance patch in detail. Considering that the previous vehicle combos used in time trials were now obsolete as a result of buffs to certain characters and nerfs to others, as well as the changes to all of the combinations, any and all time trial records were now even more prone to being broken than ever before. So naturally, players would revisit Baby Park, especially considering the fact that both 150cc and 200cc both had very long lasting records that players were itching to finally break. And so the time trials revolution began, with Genzua beating their year-long 150cc time trial record of 102.142 with a 102.069 on the day of the patch, using Luigi alongside the Ink Striker, Leaf Tires, and Paper Glider. Genzua would go on to beat their own record 6 more times in the following week, and even broke what might possibly be Baby Park's last ever second barrier on 150cc. Today, the record stands at a 101.934. When it came to 200cc, the record remained a 44.794 even after the patch, but when March 25th came around, Eternal X would do something remarkable. Eternal would come back to Baby Park and was able to squeeze out a new record by 0.04 seconds, getting a time of 44.748. So yes, the patch did improve the stats of some vehicles, but at the end of the day, these record holders were hungry for more, and in the end, they got what they were looking for. Now, it is very unlikely that we'll ever see a sub 44 on 200cc or a sub 101 on 150cc, but one thing is certain: the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe community is bigger than ever, and there's not a doubt in my mind that these records will get optimized in the future, even if only a millisecond is shaved off. So while this is where the history of Baby Park ends, this could only be the beginning. Thanks for watching.